Welcome to DeepTech315. Our first topic this week is Tesla deliveries. They came in shy of the whisper number. The whisper number, to be exact, was 501K. They came in at 496. The in-print number, if anyone cares, was 506. But that 496 number implies 2% growth. The deliveries year over year from 24 to 23 were basically flattish. And one other piece here is that production was down 2% quarter over quarter. Now, it was up 13% in the September quarter over the June quarter, and down 5% in the March to June quarter. So that production number kind of bumps up and down. This number surprised me. I was expecting upside to the whisper, but downside to the in-print number. We had called some Tesla stores earlier in the week. There were basically no promotions going on. They were fractional 3 months of free FSD and supercharging. They weren't really doing any incentives. And then we looked online, and they're basically, between San Francisco and New York, there are basically no Teslas to be found at their site. So they weren't being very aggressive, but here we are, 496, up 2%. Stock traded down as much as 8% on that news, has kind of rebounded. And since they reported that delivery number, Tesla shares are down 2.5%. That compares to the NASDAQ, which is up just over 1% during that same period. And so kind of when you put all this together and what pops out on the other side?
Well, I mean, the way that Tesla has been trading over the last 2 months, not just the last day or two, it's hard to think that these numbers matter much at all for the short term of the stock, because the stock's up 60+% since the election. Obviously, Elon has a great relationship, at least it seems like he has a great relationship with President-elect Trump. And I think that Tesla stock has kind of been the trade. You know, if you believe in the new administration, if you're optimistic about the administration, Tesla's always had a little bit of a meme, community to it too. It's just been working. And so my guess is in a week, nobody's going to care about these numbers. And we probably go back more to the narrative around, how potentially could Tesla benefit in this new regime.
So you know how much I love Tesla, own it, know how much I love Tesla. And I think that near term, we've probably gone too far, too fast. And I think that the January 29th for the earnings date, we're going to see some anxiety around what margins are going to be again, and what his commentary is going to be about growth in 2025. And last quarter, he talked about 20 to 30% growth in 25. The street's at 13%. So I think that there's still some anxiety around here. And just to put some perspective, again, I think that long term, Tesla should be much bigger than a $1.3 trillion company. We can debate where their position is and opportunity around AI, but I think it is strong. And but absent of that, if you look at the move, even going back to when they reported last quarter, it's more like an 80% move in the stock, and call it $600-700 billion in market cap that's been added. If I go and do the work just on the U.S. ride-hailing opportunity, assume that they get 70% share, I think that's probably up to an $800 billion business. In other words, that got priced in pretty fast. Now, there's opportunities for Tesla outside of the ride-hailing network, and they can sell more Teslas because of autonomy. They can sell FSD. They can license to other car makers. And so I don't want to, I'm not proposing that that's kind of the cap on it, but it just felt too far, too fast. And I guess from my perspective, there's emotion that goes on here. The emotional trade probably is we're not going to see anything particularly groundbreaking over the next month on the Tesla story. Therefore, there's probably more downside in the near term. Curious your take on that.
It seems to be a rational view of the stock, where
could be a trap. Being rational, it could be a trap.
Being rational could be a trap with Tesla. Yes, that may in fact be the outcome. And like any time that you have an opinion on Tesla stock, it's so religious that it deviates from rationality very quickly. What I would say is, like, I think Elon, number one, starting there, I think he is a net positive for humanity. So, like, anytime I criticize Tesla stock or whatever, I always feel like I need to, like, say, hey, I'm not like a hater. But I do feel like with this stock in particular, more than any of the Mag 7 names, there's always some big narrative you have to believe in after it has a move of 80%, where you say, well, look, robo-taxis aren't priced in, or Optimus isn't priced in, or whatever. But the reality is this stock has, like you said, almost doubled. It's one of the biggest companies in the world by market cap. And I don't think anything's going to change in, let's say, the next 12 to 18 months that changes the financial reality of the company in the, let's say, foreseeable future. Ride hailing, I think, is a great longer term opportunity. Optimus could be a great longer term opportunity, but we have a really long way to go before any of that gets factored into actual numbers delivered in bottom line earnings. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point you do get a pullback. But like you said, it's like, rationality is not really the play here. So I would probably just avoid at this point.
Let's shift gears to our second topic, which is, I guess, speaking of Trump and his alignment. Excuse me. Speaking of Musk with his alignment with Trump, there's another executive, Zuckerberg, who seems to be angling in that position as well. Meta making some change in terms of. I want to make sure I get the title of their the president of global affairs. This is as of January 2nd. They've replaced former person with Joel Kaplan, and Joel is rang the bell with Trump and JD Vance, I think back a couple months ago on the New York Stock Exchange. There is, clearly Zuckerberg, it feels like he's just doing a 180. And I guess, is this a bending of the knee? And if so, what does it mean for Meta?
I would probably take exception to the term bending of the knee, because, this is business, right? When you have a new administration come in, you're probably going to want to get different alignment in terms of the people that are going to be interfacing with that administration if you want to have good relations there. And so, I think this is just, playing the game that you have to play. I don't think it's bending the knee at all. Would it be bending the knee, right? If I don't know, 4 years ago, if Nick Clegg, I don't know when he joined Meta, I think it was in 2018, maybe, 2020, 2018. I don't know if that was bending the knee, trying to look forward and say, there could be a regime change or something like that. I think you just have to get people on your company or working at your company who understand what the new regime wants to do, who can work alongside them. And that's the name of the game. So I think he's just playing the game.
Yep. But do you think he would have played the game 8 years ago? Is there a change here that I like it? I'm glad that he's making this. I'm glad for Meta's business that he's kind of making these adjustments. I feel like maybe 8 years ago he was a little bit more brash and would have just said, we're just going to do it the way we do it. Now I feel like he's more open to playing the game.
It seems like it. Outside in, I think that's probably the narrative around him too, is that he seems to have had this sort of political shift to something much more aggressively neutral. I wouldn't say he's left or right at this point. I think he's pretty neutral, and embracing neutrality and embracing that, both sides can have good and useful ideas. So I think that's probably been his evolution. 4 years ago, do I think he would have done this, right? If there was a different outcome 4 years ago, I don't know. It was a different political climate. I think the climate now is one generally of more open-mindedness about the new administration. At least it seems so. I think there's a lot of optimism still in America.
Absolutely. A lot of momentum behind that. As I think as business owners, you want to align your business to benefit from that. And I'm trying to figure out what would be the benefit for Meta around this alignment? Is it something to the effect of having something that happens with TikTok? Is it something that maybe what's going on with the FTC isn't as punitive to Meta? What form with Tesla and Elon and SpaceX? That's filling in those blanks. It's relatively easy. I'm just having a harder time filling in the blanks when it comes to Meta.
I would think it's probably just little things on the margin. If you're trying to say, hey, is this new hire, a meaningful potential catalyst for the stock? No,
I don't agree.
I don't think it is at all. I think to some extent, maybe there's a little bit of influence in terms of policy direction, if it has something to do with privacy or AI or whatever. But the reality is, it's just having a seat at the table as the government thinks about how do we need to implement policy around these things, like AI, I think in particular, is super important. And having a friendly seat at the table that people will at least consider their point of view. I think that's where you get the benefit, but I think that's completely intangible. It's not something I think you could describe into the actual performance of the company.
Makes sense. Which brings us to our third topic, which is what to make of the AI trade, the big tech trade in calendar 25. And I want to replay the tape here. Early in 23, Doug, you mentioned that we're going to have a 3 to 5 year bull market that is going to end in the spectacular bursting of a bubble. This is driven by AI. Since then, the NASDAQ has been up right around 85% over those 2 year period. Last year was up about 33%. So you've been just spot on with this concept of AI pulling the markets higher. If you were going to hold us to the letter of the comment, 3 to 5 years means we got 1 to 3 years left in. And when I think about calendar 25, it seems to be the basic question: is there anything that is going to slow the momentum around AI?
I wouldn't be surprised if we take a pause. I mean, we had kind of a momentary pause in the middle of 2024 in the
These
summer,
are
if you
these
remember.
10% pullbacks that are
Right.
common. Is that
Yeah.
what?
Just a pullback in the market, a sane correction. That's, I think, a healthy part of any bull market is you have these occasional pullbacks. You let a little air out. You take a little pressure off. But I mean, I think we're still in the midst of a bull market. I don't think there's any reason to think that has ended. And my view, I mean, if you kind of look at some of these bull markets, bubbles, however you want to define things like the Nifty 50, the dot-com era, even go back to COVID 2020, 2021.
I thought you
I
can go
mean,
back to the
ultimately,
tulips, but I appreciate you
you go back
keeping
to
it.
tulips. I don't have the data point I'm going to mention here on the tulips though. But if you look at those other ones that I just mentioned, really what permanently sort of derails bull markets like that is you end up eventually in a recession, right? Like a lot of times you don't just have a bull market,
Right.
right, that goes into a bubble that just bursts on its own. There's generally some sort of catalyst that either happens like coinciding with the bursting of it, or some of the burst happens, right? Some of the air gets let out, and then whether it's
Recession
because
hits.
things got overextended and there's a lot of correlation there, then you get the recession and the thing is permanently killed. That's what I would say you have to kind of look out for over the next 1 to 3 years. What could end it? I mean, I think a recession or something near a recession could end it. But right now, I mean, you look at the multiple, even including Tesla and the Mag 7, I think we're trading 29 times forward PE for the Mag 7. And that even in 21, I believe it was, that group was pretty close to 40 times. So we're
Mm-hmm.
not
And the
at
peak at
insane
.com was
levels
100x. We're not going to get there, but I mean, there was significantly
for
higher.
the NASDAQ. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. For the NASDAQ index, it was. Yeah.
I'm going to grab the last word on this topic and understand that markets think a year, 2 years ahead. And outside of obviously the hardware, we haven't seen an impact from AI. But one of the reasons why I continue to be optimistic is just looking at the usage of these tools, it's still relatively light. And for most people, AI is still a buzzword. And OpenAI doesn't give out daily active users. They give out monthly. The last monthly number they gave out was about a month and a half ago. And it was 300, it's a weekly number, 300 million weeklies, which probably translates to about 150 million dailies. That compares to Google search at about 2.5 billion. So overall, we being you, Doug, Gene, and collectively the world still just hasn't even scratched the surface in terms of what AI potentially can do.